All right, welcome back. In this session, we're going to be talking about inheritance. Inheritance. So, inheritance means what it meant, to inherit from someone. So, in this case, we are inheriting from one class to the other. So, if a class has a property such as fields and method, another class can inherit from that class, and then it's going to inherit all its property, right? All its property can be inherited, you know from that class. So let's have an example so it can be we can drive home the point. So if we create let's say we create a class, and this class, say we call it class person. Okay. Now, so this person class, let's declare some fields in it. So let's say we have a field public, normal. We want to int age, like that, and then let's say public string string name, public string uh, let's say country, public string level. So something like this within this class. And let's say another class we have another class called let's add another class, add new. And this time around I'm adding a class, and I call this class student. Okay, I call this class student. Now, what I want to do is that I want student to inherit all the properties that this person have, because student is meant to be a person. It's meant to be human, right? So I want him to just inherit all this property like that, without having to declare its own separately. So what I would do would be to inherit from that class. I'm going to use a colon here. You use a colon, and then you put a class to be inherited. So say like person is the person we is the class we are inheriting from. So this is how to inherit from a class. Now, as it is, student has inherited all the properties that the person has. So, and in this case, the student becomes the derived class. So this one is a derived class of this class. So this is a derived class, and this one here, the one that we're deriving from, is called the base class. So the base class is pretty much like the parent, is the one that he inherited. So while the one that is inheriting is called the derived class. So that's a keyword to note. All right, so let's say within that, look at it. Let's say within this person, you we declare a method that is doing nothing but basically just saying. So let's say a void method that's just saying hello, just saying hello, something like this. And then within here we're just doing, let's say we are console writing uh it's a good day, yeah. So let's say we have something like this. So note that all these are declared within person. Now if I go in my program class, now let me instantiate my student. If I instantiate my student equals to new student. If I instantiate it like that, we have a new student. So now I just say student dot everything is available, age, country, and all of that. But what I want is say hello. Student dot say hello. You get? I just say student dot say hello. So let's see what that gives us. If you run it, you see what we get. Say it's a good day here. It's a good day here. Note that this is a good day here was actually declared in person, not in the what's it called in students, but it's actually available to students as well. So the student can use it, without having to pay for it, right? So that should be noted. That should be noted. Like that. This guy inherits from it like that. So let's say here we assign some sort of value here. Let's say we assign the value age to be 15. Okay, we assign the value age to be 15 to the person. Here in this program class, I could just say that console.log console.writeLine, then say student dot student dot age student dot age. You run that, and then you see what we got. So we got the 15 accessible to us. So pretty much this is a demonstration of someone inheriting a member of a property from its base class, inheriting from its base class. So that should I think that's quite straightforward. So now let's say that if this person has a constructor. Let's say there's a constructor here. Let's say we, instead of having it this thing, let's say we have this as a private member. Let's say we have them as private member, which should be the ideal thing. Let's say we have this one as private member. We have this one as a private member. This one as a private member. These fields became private. Look at what you got in your here. So the student does not have those property anymore. So when a member is private, it's only accessible to the base class. So it's not accessible to even the class that is inheriting it, that's deriving from it. So that should be noted. All right. So let's say that we have a constructor. Let me go back here and have this commented. So let's say we have a constructor within the base class. So here, let's say here, just remember I told you to, so you can go to quick action and generate constructor. So let's say we're generating a constructor of all these property, like that. It's constructor for all this property. So we realize that the constructor has been created with all this variable like that, and then we're using this for the member. Now go and see what is happening within the student class. No, there's an error now. There wasn't any error before, because nothing was written within the student class. But now an error has been introduced, and if you mouse over that red stuff, you see what he's talking about. He's saying that there is no arguments that correspond to the required formal parameter. So once you have, if your base class has a constructor, about a constructor, this derived class has to reference that constructor. So you can fix it by actually clicking in here. That's one of the ways to fix it. So if you see hard access modifier, maybe you make it a public and all of those things, or you can yeah. So he's saying that the access modifier or suppress this thing. So we have something like this. So but we don't want this to be that. So let's say that we have generate constructor. So you generate constructor for this. So this is going to have its constructor, uh, its own constructor. But you look at how its constructor is written. You see the constructor, which is the student, and then you have this colon also. You know, then you have the base. This base represents the base class, and then you have the constructor of the base class. So this is how you declare the constructor of a derived class. So its own constructor, and then you have the colon, just like its own class is also having a colon to the base class. Then you have the base here, and then you put the what's it called, the constructor of that of the initial, or what do I call it, of the base class, right? Yeah. So this is a point to note, right? So now the moment you do this, let's say you do some sort of getter and setter in the base class. So let's say here you expose the age through let's say you have a public element which is doing, so let's say public int, let's say we call that one underscore age, which is actually doing this stuff. What it's doing is get. So the get is going to return age. Since age is accessible to this to the members of this class, so this one is going to have access to it, but in turn is now exposing the value to any other place where the person is declared or is derived. So if I do this now, if I go back to my derived class, or that we instantiate here, I can then have something like this. Because now there's a constructor, and the constructor that we have is this one here lacks the parameter that was declared. So the first parameter, I guess, is age. So let's say we assign 10 to it. The second parameter is name. So let's say we have that to be Alex, and then we have our country to be United Kingdom. Then I guess that's all. Yeah, so there are 3 parameters. Then here dots, of course I have access to the one that's the public property. So pretty much stuff works now. There's no argument given that corresponds to the required level. Okay, there are 4 parameters. There's a level. So level, let me say a pro, right? So here I've assigned 10 here. The original value that was assigned in the base class was 15, I guess. So now I'm changing it to 10, and so if we run that, you get to see that we are seeing a value of that. So these are things to note, and these are things to know when you're talking about derivation. Now, another thing you want to do is that if you don't want any class, for whatever reason, you don't want that class to be derived, and you don't want to declare it as a struct, you want to declare it as a class, but you don't want it derived. So what you want to do is you seal it up. You can seal a class. So let's say we have in this person now, if I come here and I create this one, I call it a sealed class. So there's what we call sealed. So you can see sealed here. When you have a sealed class, it means that it's sealed up. Go back to this student. You can see that we have an error. Student cannot derive from sealed type person because it's sealed, so you can't derive from it. So if you want to seal up a class such that it cannot be inherited by any other class, then you're gonna have to seal it up. All right. So I'm going to remove it from being sealed because I don't want it to be sealed. I want it to have the extensibility. All right. So this is a bit of you know inheritance. This is a bit of inheritance. Catch you.